What's up everybody and welcome back to the channel. With the release of season 1 for the First Descendant, we have a brand new mechanic that we can essentially spend time leveling, which will give us additional power in the game. What I'm referring to is of course the inversion reinforcement tab over here. And basically how this works is through collecting iron heart particles, you are able to accumulate XP up here, and once you hit a certain threshold, you can spend that XP to essentially buy yourself some of these tabs. Now these can range from being kind of like not that great to actually pretty damn useful, like for instance giving you a lot of additional survivability as you kill enemies. Now the main way that you get these iron heart particles is actually by completing these disruption events, since those will give you these daily. However, there's a far better way for you to accumulate a huge amount of these, at least at the very beginning of this entire activity, and that is by looking at each one of the areas in the game. Like let's just pick Echo Swamp here, and you'll see that you have iron heart particles collected 10 out of 10. Now these are additional activities that you can do in this specific region, and this will give you more of those iron heart particles once you complete them, and then will allow you to skill up and basically unlock more of these cells faster than waiting for the disruption activities coming every day. Now these actually range from a whole bunch of different things that you can do. Some of them are very simple, like for instance just using a support drone at the base, or like for instance going around and opening up munitions bins. But some of them also require you to do very specific things like defeat commanders, defeat elites, and defeat champions. Now I'm going to in this video show you the most efficient way to grind out commanders, elites, and champions in each one of these areas, so that you can complete this efficiently and fast and get the exact skills unlocked in the inversion tree that you are looking for. So first things first, what are elites, champions, and commanders? Now elites are these yellow bar enemies that you often find as the final enemy to kill to finish a mission. There are some missions that give you multiples of these, and those would of course be favorable ones for us to target. Champions, on the other hand, are these special enemies that you find in the map. Basically they have this red orange text as their name, and these are the ones that usually come with the additional attributes like HP up, or they have like an aura around them, or they create like fire explosions or something like that. And lastly, that leaves us with commanders, and usually commanders are the enemies that you face at the end of a reactor. So if you actually pay the fee to fight a reactor boss, so if we just go over here, like for example, if you farm up the fragments here and then you go pay them at the reactor and you fight that boss there, that is a commander. Now not all reactors have the same commanders, and some of these commanders don't count. Basically, if you have multiple commanders that come out of a reactor for some reason at the moment right now in the game, those don't count for kills. So you want to be fighting solo commanders, and generally a good rule of thumb is if you want to know if the commander will count, despite just killing it and checking if the number goes up, is if it's a commander with an invulnerability phase with the balls and stuff like that, or by summoning a bunch of enemies around him, that is a pretty good indication that it's going to be a commander that'll count for this exact number that you're trying to hit. Alrighty, so now that we have the logistics done and sorted, we're going to be doing this chronologically as you explore the regions when you originally play the story, which means that we're going to start with Kingston first. Now Kingston itself does not have a requirement for commanders. You only need elites and you only need champions, so we don't have to worry about that. Now specifically when it comes to elites, basically you want to be going to the destruction, and you want to be doing this mission over here, Kingston Communications Repeater. So this mission over here, basically you just go inside here and you'll have a bunch of different champions also spawning, but you'll get an elite at the end. And one of the reasons why this mission is good is because it's super fast. It's like 2 minutes and you get your elite done and dusted. Now when it comes to doing champions themselves, what you want to be doing is you want to be going over to the Fallen Theater, and you want to be doing this Vulgus Occupied Buildings. This is an extermination mission, also 2 minutes or less, but does not have an elite at the end. It only has a bunch of champions for you to kill, and basically you're looking at an average of 9, between 8 and 9 champions per run here, which is really good. That means every 2 minutes you can do almost 10 champions, which means you'll be able to grind these out super fast. Now basically the rule of thumb here is, and you'll notice that when you look at your tab, you'll notice that you'll have far more champions to kill than you have elites. So my rule here is basically that if I still have elites to kill, I come over here and I do Kingston Communications Repeater, because that gives me an elite and champions. And if I only have champions left because I've finished my 10 or 15 elites that I need to kill, then I grind out Volker's Occupied Buildings, because that only gives champions. Then next up we have Echo Swamp. So with Echo Swamp, we actually have to find all three types. So we have to find elites, we have to find champions, and we have to find commanders. So specifically when it comes to both of the elites and champions, you cannot go wrong with, in the abandoned zone, doing environment contamination zone. This is a very famous farm. It's really good for Kuiper, XP, weapon proficiency, and all of that. But it also is really good because there are 2 elites that spawn at the end of this, 2 yellow bar elites that you can kill. And it also spawns usually a huge amount of champions, anywhere between 5 to 6 per run. This is also something that you can complete relatively super fast, especially if you have something like a bunny or even a Valby. And so this activity is really good to just grind out both elites and champions. Now, when it comes to doing the commander, what you want to be doing is going over to Derelict over here. I was actually talking about this commander just now, and you want to be just farming up, obviously, the void fragments that you need for this, and you want to be just hitting this commander over here 10 times. Now, bear in mind, though, that there are other ones that you can do as well. There's, you know, the one in Muskeg Swamp, but the one in Muskeg Swamp is a terrible commander, and by far the easiest dude to kill would be this guy over here, this commander over here. Next up, we have Vespers. Vespers is not a great area. There's 2 of these that I didn't like because the grind is a little bit rough. But basically, when you're looking at Vespers, first of all, you need to be checking out over by the ruins. Now, all of these missions are kind of like the same. So Ruins Courtyard is the same, Ruins Underground Entrance is the same, Destroyed Temple is the same. In terms of like what I mean is they give a decent amount of champions and they give an elite at the end. Unfortunately, there's no double elite for us like we saw in Echo Swamp. But I think like the most consistent one, at least in numbers that I have, is Destroyed Temple. So Destroyed Temple, essentially you're just controlling this point here, and you'll have enemies that are coming up from the bottom and to the sides, and you'll kill these champions, and then at the very end of this mission you'll also have an elite to kill. Now, something that often happens at the Destroyed Temple is, and I don't think I have any footage of that, but that you have specific champions where if you kill that champion and there's a bunch of enemies around it, it'll actually turn those enemies into champions as well. So always hit the champion first. I can't recall exactly what the affix is called, but always hit the champion first, because you have a chance of it infecting the other champions around it, and then you get like, you know, 3, 4 for the price of 1. But if you do the Destroyed Temple, you're looking at about 5 to 6 champions per run, and then of course the elite at the end, so it's not all that bad and you can grind it out relatively easily. Now, when it comes to doing your commander run, Lost Supply Depot is by far the best. It's this one over here. This is a super simple commander to kill and doesn't have any weird tricks or anything about him. Doesn't summon a bunch of enemies, and you can basically murder him out relatively fast. Next up after that is Sterile Land. So Sterile Land itself has Rockfall over here with Anticipated Ambush Point. Now, this is another really famous mission. It's super fast to grind, even if you don't have a bunny or something like that. And basically this will net you the 1 elite at the end of the fight, and also something like about 8 to 9 average champions per rotation. So super fast way to accumulate the numbers on both of these champions as well as elites. And basically you can just grind out this activity and just get those numbers hitting. Now, when it comes to your commander for this area, I would highly recommend something like the Restricted Zone over here, this reactor over here. So you can farm the material up over here, or, you know, basically anywhere else. What you're going to need is you're going to need some polymer, and then over here you'll pay the 45 polymer and you'll basically kill this boss. Now, for example, here in Rockfall, you have a reactor that has 2 bosses. And this is one of the first places where I tested it, and you're welcome to try it out yourself. My idea was in places where we could get multiple bosses from a reactor, this would let us do these commanders faster. But killing both of these commanders does not actually increase you at all. Not by 1 or 2, nothing. So unfortunately, it needs to be commanders that are spawning 1 at a time from a reactor. Then moving us on to Agna Desert. So specifically in Agna Desert, if you are targeting elites and only elites, or basically elites, you want to finish them off first, you should be coming over to the Vermilion Waste, and basically what you should be doing is you should be doing this rock cave base mission. This will give you 1 elite at the end. It's also a fast-ish mission to do, but the reason why I also choose this one is very much the same reason why I chose the mission in Kingston for us, because this mission also features a decent amount of champions. So if you are farming both elites and champions, do rock cave base. And then again, same thing that I gave you in Kingston. Once you've finished your elites and now you are only looking for champions, you should come on over to Mirage Stone and you should do this mission over here, Heavy Equipment Entry Path. Now this is a fairly long mission. You can see it has a 15-minute timer, or at least it says it'll take you 15 minutes or less to complete it, but essentially has you fighting over this entire area and spawns a crap ton of champions for you to kill. On average, you'll be killing 10 to 11 of these per run, and it's just a really efficient way of essentially grinding these out. Now, when you want to concentrate on doing commanders, we will go back to the Vermilion Waste and we will do this commander over here. To grind out his material, you'll simply come over to this over here, and basically you need organic void shards, and then you pay your 45 over here and you kill him. This is a very straightforward boss, doesn't have a lot of HP, and even though he has an invulnerability phase, his moves are easy to dodge and you can kill him super fast and grind out your required commander kills. That means White Knight Gulch is up next, and for this specifically, if you are grinding elites, you want to be going to the observatory and you want to be hitting this mission over here, Orders Occupied Facility. Now this actually gives you 2 elites at the end of this mission, which is really good, and it gives you a bunch of champions to boot. So very similar to the previous way that I suggest. The reason why I pick these missions is because they're good for elites and a decent amount of champions. So focus on doing Orders Occupied Facility first and kill all the elites that you require for the mission, and then basically once you've hit your maximum amount of elites that you need, then just switch on over to the mountaintops over here, and it's this mission, Orders Patrol Beat. Now this one is really good for champions. You're doing 5 to 6 per run, and basically you can just grind out this activity. It's a small area that you have to essentially run up, and it's got a little bit of verticality, and you can oftentimes run into situations where you also have this type of champion that infects other champions and then makes more of them. So if you get lucky with one of those, then you should be able to grind this out even faster. Now, when it comes to doing the commander in White Knight Gulch, I can recommend Observatory, this one over here. Now, White Knight Gulch is a tough one because you either have basically, first of all, so let me just explain. The Mountaintops one doesn't count because the Mountaintops is 2 commanders that spawn, and you can't get any points from killing those 2 commanders. Now, that leaves us with the reactor in the hatchery or the reactor over here in the observatory. And the reactor in the hatchery, if you know, you know, this is the fucking stupidest reactor boss in the game. Even though he's been nerfed, he's still really irritating to fight because he throws up these shields and shit that you have to basically fight through. So by far the more straightforward boss for me to fight is this one over here. I will, however, mention that this is a kind of a toughish one because he hits you with a lot of like chill stuff and freezes you and so on. Plus his invulnerability wave also spawns like a bunch of enemies for you to fight. So obviously bring something with like AoE or something and you'll be able to just grind them down super duper fast. Our second last area is of course Hagios. So Hagios, what you want to be doing is, if you're looking for elites, you want to be coming to forward base and you want to be hitting up Broadband Fleet Beacon. This is actually going to give you 3 elites per run, and that's the reason why we picked this one. We're going to be able to grind out those elites super fast. Now, the other thing that I really like about a Broadband Fleet Beacon is it also spawns a huge amount of champions. So even after you've finished doing your elites, I would consider just continuing on to do this and just farm the champions out of this as well. This is a fairly straightforward mission and culminates in one of these rings that you're essentially in the end, and that's where you get another 2 elites spawning in there. Plus, you just get a whole bunch of these champions essentially charging you down, and you could be looking at anywhere between 7 to 8 champions per run, which is really not that bad considering that this run also gives you some crafting material, which is also good for some of the research that you obviously need to do for weapons, descendants, and so forth. When it comes to you looking for a commander, I can highly recommend Fractured Monolith, this one over here, Once again, this one over here, Dune Base, has a reactor, and this reactor spawns 3 bosses, and I was like, fuck yeah, this is going to be awesome. None of those bosses count, unfortunately. None of those commanders count. So we need to be coming over to Fractured Monolith over here. We need to be doing this reactor here, and that is going to get you the required commander kills that you need. And then last but not least, that leaves us with Fortress, right? So with Fortress, what we want to do if we're looking for elites is we want to be coming all the way over to the Frozen Valley, and we want to be doing a mission called Munitions Loading Dock. I believe it's this one here. There we go. So Munitions Loading Dock, this is gonna give you 1 elite at the end of it, plus additional champions as well. But basically, as soon as you finish your elites and finish grinding that out, you should be switching over to Frozen Valley. You should be getting yourself this Gate System Control Network mission. Now, this is one of these missions that have 3 areas that you have to activate, and then essentially you wait until they finish hacking, and then you pick up the item and you bring it to the bin. But what you can do is you can activate all 3 of these and then essentially just move in between the 3. It's going to spawn a decent amount of champions for you to kill. I was doing between 8 to 10 per run, so you'll be able to grind that out relatively fast. And what you can also do is you can essentially just activate all 3 and then pop up on the high ground with a sniper rifle or something like that and just shoot the enemies off the pads to get the activity to keep rolling. But this is super straightforward, and you can get your champions done lickety split. And when it comes to your commander, you're also still going to stick around in the Frozen Valley, and you're just going to come up here and you're going to do this commander. Once again, our choices here are not phenomenal. I prefer fighting this boss over here than to this one over here in Fallen Ark. And so you'll simply just come up here. This is a boss with an invulnerability phase. Unfortunately, does have the once in a while thing of trying to freeze you, but it has a relatively low HP, and you can essentially kill it super fast. If you have a decent sniper rifle, you can essentially just double tap it the first time and then get it to go into its invulnerability phase, and then tap it again, and Bob's your uncle. And one last thing before I let you go, of course, I also have this information in an Excel tab in the file that's linked in the description as usual. So if that's easier for you to essentially just look at the information in this way instead of following through the video, of course, that is also available to you. So have fun and enjoy. Happy hunting. And that's going to be it for the video. Thank you so much for watching, especially if you made it this far. Hopefully this helps you to grind out these super fast. The reason why you'd want to do these faster than just doing the disruption missions is so that you can get those unlocks quicker, and that you can get the benefit from them, which can help you in some of these disruption activities, plus just make some parts of the game a little bit easier, like for instance void intercept bosses and that sort of thing. Other than that, it's just super important to me that you have a fantastic morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world. Till next video, fucking cheers.